1, 2, 3. It's Tuesday, the 30th of June, Jim Grant, and it's the cruise. You put the news with Craig, that makes cruise. You leave Jim Grant completely out of it, it remains cruise. And here we are on the verge of July, through the hideousness of lockdown and all that's coming. It's a reprisal always, Jim, but we love talking about it. It keeps us up to date and trying to figure out what's going on out there. And what do we have lined up to do that today?
On episode 14, we're going to be looking...
I don't think we could do it.
Looking at, well, we got rid of the cursed one, didn't we? 13. I really enjoyed that. Aldi apologizes after customer.
Oh, Jim, I have to interrupt. That feels so horrible that we should have thought to cut it out just to have people think that it really meant something to us. It would have been really amazing. There is no Cruise 13. It'll be like the question of our 3 fans in 2050. Do you remember that crazy, that half news, half cruise thing that was with Jim Grant, Craig Campbell? Yeah, I remember that thing. And do you remember what was episode 13 like? It's like, oh, they didn't have one, and then they find out they're real fans and fucking the post-apocalyptic bombscape.
Let's be more realistic on your story, where it begins, hey, do you remember that half news, half cruise thing? And the other person turns and goes, no. What are you talking about? Yeah. Well, there was this little guy that just read out news articles, and there was this big guy that was always naked and looked like Sasquatch, and between them they were, that's probably, and they go, that doesn't sound like something I really want to listen to. Hey, let's put on X Factor. That's probably how that conversation goes into.
It makes me real, I lost my stones just when I was starting to feel, it wasn't pain from your story, Jim. It was pain from my back.
Well, while you're fitting your stone in where the sun doesn't shine, I will tell you what we've got coming up on today's show. We've got Aldi apologising after a customer discovers a cow's eyelid in their minced beef packets. We're going to be looking at how lockdown and social distancing could actually weaken our immune system. We're going to be looking at medical experts saying that masks are not good for you, worn, whenever you're out, the odd little occasion here and there, but continuous use is not good for you. What else have we got coming up on today? We're going to be looking at scientists believe cannabis could help treat coronavirus. We're going to be looking at India banning loads of Chinese apps, including TikTok. And what else have we got coming up here today? How Florida scientist said she was fired for refusing to manipulate the COVID data. And to look at more things about how the pubs are going to reopen in Britain with more ludicrous things.
Looking I was all excited about this episode for Marston's, one of our local pubs, by the way. The Marston owner or district manager or whoever it is given the guidelines.
Let's drink in his pub. Hey, does he want a comedy night? Let's do business.
Absolutely. It already is the most exhilarating night of ever been planned so far, just because of the occasion. Somebody who's got a clue! A clue!
I saw that on your Facebook feed. Where is that pub? Where in the country is it?
It's a series of pubs. It's a chain of pubs called Marston's, and they're just wonderful. We go to them all the time. They're great. They tend to have really nice carveries, and their pints are cold, and they tend to have outdoor seating, and there's ducks around, and kids playgrounds, and I have kids, by the way. Don't like everyone. There's kids playgrounds. You get to crank fags and stare at the kids while they're playing in them clothes. You know the ones. There's none of that. No, I bring my own kids.
Yeah, he hasn't stolen anyone else's. Don't let looks deceive you.
That you're aware of. Thus far. So yeah, we're excited about that, Jim. It's like a sliver of good news, isn't it?
Yeah, well, he must have listened to our episode 13 where you've gone, is there anyone that isn't absolutely mad? Absolutely mad. And that's my Craig impression. And he's answered the call. He's gone, yep, I'm not going to go for that. I'm going to take my own chances. And I think your suggestion last episode about a waiver is an excellent idea. But enough about episode 13. Let's move on to episode 14 with our first article here today. It is from The Mirror, and it is by Bethan Sexton and James Andrews. Aldi apologises after this customer discovers cow. What is wrong with my tongue today? I did it the first time. Aldi apologises after customer discovers cow's eyelid in minced beef packet. Harry West was getting ready to eat his dinner when he spotted something that really didn't look right in the packet of his Aldi mince he'd bought, and others were pretty unimpressed when he shared it too. That's the 26th of June.
I was expecting minced beef. What do you think it was? How specific do you think they got to be? There's got to be some allowance for offal in there. You know that there's shoveling bits off the ground and throwing it over their shoulders into bins. And to my knowledge, that's, the abattoir atmosphere is really hard to keep. That's why they use things like, may contain nuts in a Mars bar, for crying out loud. Jim, you and I both know it, because these kind of places are not are not particularly pristine. So an eyelid in your mince, I'd consider it in the mid of lockdown. That's like the lucky cereal box. Your family's been marked for only deprogramming, not extermination. They want you to live, buddy. Well done.
He said that Harry West from Sunbury on the Thames in Surrey said he was left in disbelief after spotting the clump of eyelashes 2 weeks ago. It's what you'd imagine to find after a dance floor flight in a nightclub in Essex.
And can I just ask, Tim, what the hell is a guy living on the Thames shopping at Aldi for? See, clearly a Waitrose neighborhood. I don't know much about Sundry on the Thames, but there's very little Thames front property in my experience that isn't pretty extortionate in this part of the world. But maybe that's it. It's getting that bad, Jim, that even the rich people are shopping at Aldi. It's the pressure of lockdown. We're all feeling it, even the gentry. Complaining about eyelids now.
Yeah, well,
on his way to a polo match.
It's a good point, perhaps.
It ruined my cucumber sandwich.
We know that this is going to eviscerate the middle class. So, something
the already eviscerated middle
something
class.
To keep an eye on. Joke. Awful. Moving on. It's awful.
Stop doing that.
There's no need for any of you to troll us on the internet. We know that was a terrible joke. No comments necessary. It won't be brought out again. So this is our next article by Steve Bird, the 27th of June, 2020. Lockdown and social distancing could make our immune system weaker, says scientist. People are not exposed to germs. And so
they needed a scientist. Is there a scientist that can read this out? Because they're not listening to me. Jesus Christ. Oh, it's so hideous, Jim. It's so over the top. It's just like, and I have to say, sorry to interrupt in the middle of your reading the article, but I was listening to the BBC on the radio last night, and it was the first time I'd seen it introduced on mainstream, that exactly the same thing, that they're starting to, in some way, suggest that diet might be related to health. I couldn't believe it. It was like, it's like clearly they're trying to burn off some viewing in the wrong direction there. Maybe it's a limited hangout operation or something. We'll have that doctor, whoever was mentioning it on the BBC, will be turned into a public pedophile before we know it. It's like, don't listen to him anymore. This is the kind of scum that says ridiculous notions like health and nutrition affect in any way your well-being. It's just, God, we live in a nutty world, Jim. It's nuts. What's the rest of it?
Well, the thing that surprised me most about what you said was that you still watch mainstream news.
I was listening to 2 hours of it last night, Sunday night, driving of all things, which was crazy for me, Jim. I hadn't done it for years and years, and it was a real thing to swallow. I just it was story after story with just bold commitments to the new normal, basically, just from different different characters. That who's that Hugh Fernley Witteron? Have you heard that guy talking? Holy Christ! Just all of these. We got to look at the good bit. It's the good bit that they locked us down and murdered our elderly. There's the nice bit that's happening as well. That it's made us all reflect on our diets. Just like who are these people? And it was a real eye opener. It was pretty damn hideous, Jim. But that they at the same time suggested that and on the back of those affected by COVID, what was apparently inspiring it, because even the ones that are under 75 or 80, the ones that are struck are in abysmal condition. And there's a lot of crossover illnesses, particularly diabetes, which isn't everybody's fault, certainly, but a lot of people have effect over diabetes in their own lives by avoiding, the diets that can lead to it. So there's relevance,
A mutual comedian friend of ours, Louis Schaefer, might have something.
Oh, yes, Louis Schaefer.
Doesn't he know a great deal about diet? Well, I've seen the pictures over the last 10 years.
My estimation, yes, entirely. And but again, he is a perfect example, in fact, Jim, because he's a controversial figure of somebody who espouses what a lot of people consider to be unfounded diet advice, but it's entirely cured all of the symptoms that he was most worried about in himself. So he's only just yeah, absolutely. He's only making public the things that have worked on him. And one of the things that he's done is changed his diet to bring himself out of classification as a what do you call them, diabetic.
Let's get him on the show.
I know not everyone can control their diabetes through their diet, and I certainly no truck or interest in attacking those who suffer that, because I've had many and still do have several really close friends that are entirely debilitated by it. It's a hideous disease, but people like Louis Schaefer have a version of it that's controllable through diet, and he's just basically, it's almost Atkins, isn't it? Have you seen it?
Get him on the show. I've never spoken to him about his
Louis Schaefer.
Let's get him on the show. Give him 15 minutes to say what he did, because
absolutely. I agree with you.
I've only gigged with him a couple of times, and we didn't really have a chance to speak.
Tremendous company.
More than like a minute. So I don't really know him that well, but on Facebook you can see how well he does.
Say in our business is always on. He's always on. But if you're in a mood for a dose of Louis Schaefer, it couldn't be better. It's a wonderful on to behold. So yeah, it would be nice to have him on.
Let's reach out, and this will probably be in a month or two with what we've got planned coming up. But yeah, we could probably say to our listeners in a month or two, we're going to try and reach out to guests.
Bring on tell us all about his diet that kicked his own diabetes. Why not? It could only help. Well, it would be nice.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to be a doctor to say this helped me.
You can always take a screenshot of it and put it on your dartboard. We don't give a fuck what happens after you watch what we're doing, but but you could do that. You can also learn something for your diet.
Well, there's a hungering for it, because you see all the before and after photos, and they're notorious for being photoshopped or completely different people. But here's a guy we actually know who did it.
Absolutely.
So, let's get it.
But shit for it.
Yeah. And but where were we? So
people are worried that he's going to give advice that could hurt people. I think that's probably the main impetus. But we were at the idea that diet could help against COVID.
Yeah. Well, we wouldn't have him on to say giving advice. We'd just have him on to tell his story and say, this worked for me. You do what you want. That's. I like the idea of people listening to.
Remote. I want them in our bedrooms.
Of people. Well, we had the new software and the smart devices, but I like the idea of people going, "Hey, this is my story. Make up your own mind. Do your own research," rather than just, hey, here's the latest brand that the TV tells you will lose weight.
Yeah.
You know, actually look at your friends and immediate circle, look at who's got a history of success, and give it a go, because like you say, the bodies are different for everyone, aren't they? So you could have someone try Louis Schaefer's diet 100% and it just not work for them.
They're now starting to see, Jim, if you haven't, I've seen it referenced several times. I haven't dove too deeply into it, but there's a mention that they also feel like even blood type may be one of the markers for vulnerability to COVID-19. So,
well, we've covered that on the show previously.
And this is still the COVID-19 that, to my understanding and belief, they've not isolated as its own coronavirus anyway, and that's hotly disputed. But regardless, that's the COVID. That's the.
Well, what we can do is we can just blitz through about sort of 5 articles that I've got that kind of back up what you've all just said.
Right.
You can just blitz and go boom, 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 boom. So speaking of which, people who are not exposed to germs and so do not develop defences that could protect them against future pandemics, Oxford epidemiologist warns. And that's by Steve Bird at The Telegraph. So that's about the lockdown and social distancing making our immune system weaker, according to that scientist. We've bearing that in mind, we've now got.
But it does protect your potatoes. Your cellar is still good for things, just not you. It's not good for you or your immune system. But if you're keeping your root vegetables there, no, absolutely keep doing that. That's still a good thing. But, stop chain smoking in your cellar. It's not helping your cough vulnerability. Christ.
So this is by Sean Elvin at the Metro. Police can fine people in pubs who are breaking social distancing rules.
Sorry. Is that someone having a pint? Hold my notepad, young officer. What next, Jim? What next on this, just like this never-ending litany of madness that we live in? What risk? You see the cops? There you are with your pint. The cops come into the room. You go, what possibly are people doing? Oh, it's the distancing. It's the distance cops now. Now you gotta, like, as soon as that you got 2 in you, I think they're only gonna let you drink 1 or 2 now, right? That was part of the deal, that they were restricting how much alcohol. That was happening leading up to the lockdown. But regardless of that, now you're gonna have your 1.5, whatever they let you have, and the cops come into the room and you're a bit half cut. And you got to be like immediately freaked out that you're not like 1.9 meters away from anybody around you. It's just like, it's tension, Jim. It's like episode 13. Why are people flushing meth? Because the cops are booting the doors in. If the cops quit booting the doors in, the meth doesn't get into the alligators. It's that easy. This has nothing to do with meth or alligators. Stop booting the doors in. Now we got British cops coming in to make sure. How will they take them to task because the mannequins that are jammed between you that we know about, Jim, are they like not regulation? Do we have that as a worry now that some...
So Downing Street confirmed yesterday, large and irresponsible gatherings of more than 30 people can be dispersed by officers. A Number 10 spokesperson said what the police will be able to do is break up large and irresponsible gatherings of over 30 people. We have a test and trace system in place. If there are particular outbreaks that are linked to premises, it will be easy to track those back. I can just see, if comedy gets, back it right. First of all, no more than 30 tickets to be sold. Right. Okay. And
that's all right.
The police
never sold 30 tickets in my life. That's amazing.
The police standing in the corner, and the first person that laughs is arrested for spreading COVID via the aerosol spraying. But sure. Did you not know that singing and laughing spreads the virus? And that's it, the comedy club staring in stone cold silence, not aware from anyone, too afraid to laugh. And the moment someone laughs, that's it. Take them to jail or fine them on the spot.
Officers!
Yeah. You know,
we live in Madland. It's
and
amazing.
promoters suddenly going, right, let's book the most unfunniest acts that we can get, just so
to
we
get
don't
us through this.
yeah, just to keep our business going.
These guidelines before the repercussions are more than we can afford in security. We've just got to play along with these fellers.
COVID, if that happens, COVID could be good for my career. So let's move on to the next article that we've got here. It is from, but bearing this in mind that we've got all these stringent measures, when I read out this article, it's from MSN, and it is, so it is I think it's the 19th of May. So, we're going back over a month again, but we missed this one. So occasionally stuff slips through the net and we don't cover it on shows. And I go through what previous podcast lists that we didn't get to. And I think, that's a good story. We should say that irrespective of time. So the headline reads, Florida scientist said she was fired for refusing to manipulate COVID-19 data. This is by Alessandro Marazzi Sassoon. And the scientist who created Florida's COVID-19 data portal wasn't just removed from her position on May the 5th. She was fired on Monday by the Department of Health, she said, for refusing to manipulate data. Rebecca Jones said in an email to Florida Today that she single-handedly created 2 applications in 2 languages, 4 dashboards, 6 unique maps with layers of data functionality for 32 variables covering 500,000 lines of data. Her objective was to create a way for Floridians and researchers to see what the COVID-19 situation was in real time. Then she was dismissed. She said, I worked on it alone 16 hours a day for 2 months, most of which I was never paid for. And now that this happened, I'll probably never get paid for, she wrote in an email, confirming that she had not just been reassigned on May the 5th, but fired from her job as Geographic Information Systems Manager for the Florida Department of Health.
Wow. Wow. I was thinking because it was the states and a medical concern that it was perhaps from a private hospital, but of course it's the state's body. The state's health body instead. It's like, hey, and then I guess the next thing you have to say is, hey, that's Florida. At least nobody got shot. Woo. It's always been a bit of a Wild West, hasn't it? Unfortunately, one of those. Sorry, I mean America. Did I say Florida? But yeah.
And this is another article from the 22nd of May. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, acknowledged Thursday that it is combining the results from viral and antibody COVID-19 tests when reporting the country's testing totals, despite marked differences between the tests. And the headline of that article, that again by MSN, is CDC acknowledges mixing up coronavirus testing data. So you've got all these. You've got the tests being weird. We've covered that on previous shows.
Unreliable, as you can imagine.
The fruit and the goat in Tanzania.
Yeah,
we've got the data. We've got the data testing being mixed up, and we've got scientists saying they're manipulating the data. You've got to put all the, of course, these are taken from different parts of the world and all that kind of stuff. But you've got to put the pieces of the puzzle together. I think at this point.
The conclusion that testing cannot in any way be trusted.
Not 100%. I'm sure there are some things. What I'm saying is we're working. When we're trying to, science is all about the data, and at the moment we've got claims of the input data being unreliable, the analysis of the data being unreliable, and the output data being manipulated. We've just given you 3 articles of that, and of course it's different parts of the world, and that who knows, we've never met these people, we don't know if everything's accurate, but for the benefit of our audience, we've just given you the modeling is basically data in, analysis, data out. And we've just given you an example of all 3 steps of those stages having evidence that some of it may be a bit iffy.
Sure.
So I think that needs to be taken on board at this point with all, and again, we've never have been in this whole thing's a hoax. Me and Craig have always said it's real, but the
data's being flexed.
Yeah, and the reaction to it may be disproportional and may have a point of diminishing returns in terms of safety and economic, basically in terms of saving lives through safety, immune system,
knock-on deaths.
Yeah, knock-on deaths, collateral damage. As the government, I'm sure, would
not damage,
unavoidable
humans dying.
Yeah. So it seems that we're not the only one that seem to be smelling a little bit of a rat in here, because our next article here, Craig, is from The Independent. And again, this is a month on. This is why I wanted to bring up the article, because I've got absolutely zero proof that and the other article that I read out are linked. But I just wanted to read them out in the same show and see what you think, to see if there's any possible connection here. So this is from The Independent, and this, bearing in mind the other article we mentioned was about a month ago. This is only 4 days ago, Craig. So Florida community meeting goes viral after residents link devil's mask law to deep state. A community meeting in Florida has gone viral after residents opposed a devil's law mandating the wearing of masks that they said was part of a grand conspiracy connected to the deep state, 5G, Bill Gates, Hillary Clinton, and pedophiles. Palm Beach County issued an emergency order making masks compulsory starting on Thursday, with a maximum fine of $500 for those who fail to wear them. A community meeting erupted with cries of shame as the law was passed unanimously after impassioned pleas from residents over what they saw as a threat to American Constitution failed to move county commissioners. It's not just that, but we'll look at evidence coming up that those masks may be counterproductive. So what do you think of that, Craig?
Well, I think that the text, as crazy as it was focused on to make it attractive for the media, is irrelevant to the right that anybody has to not be dictated to, especially if it impedes their breathing. That's I think pretty it's normal that these days, you and I see it every day, that it's the use of people making a valid point as creating a pejorative against them, right? They have to look like the crazies. I'd like to not be wearing a mask that brings my oxygen intake down 3 or 4 points, from the 21% of the air that I should be breathing in the normal atmosphere, but you want me to wander around at breathing 17% oxygen and be having more cells in my mind and my body dying, and all the things, as Jim's just hinted to, that we know are the result of the wearing of masks. And then when people we can also add, Jim, only people that are in an amplified experience regarding it, because their county has made it mandatory that you have to wear them. So no wonder they're crying out. I'm just surprised that they're not showing more people crying out. It's one of this process. It's one of my favorite things about America. It's just like, it's great that at least they get that voice to make it clear. And you saw it. Did you see some of that video? They're like pointing right in those people's faces here. Whether it's in this life or the next, you guys are all going to a deep, dark hell. And that's, that's as accurate as you ever want to get. They're talking the truth there, because these people are demons, and they should have no power over the public's behavior at all.
Yeah, I mean, there's different definitions of demons and all that kind of stuff, aren't there? But sure. I mean, I should probably
I didn't
point
say
out
Satan
that,
himself.
Yeah.
I said some of other demon progeny. I don't know exactly which demons, but
I think we can all say that those people are. probably the kindest thing you can say is they may not be they always say we're being led by the science, but the science says that wearing masks regularly, especially if exercising, is very bad for you. But I mean, I must really point out here, Craig, you're not a doctor, so you know, you suggesting that human beings require oxygen, I think you're a little bit out of the remit there.
Well, that's also why it becomes funny as well, and why you have to like watch that it matters what their argument is, because it doesn't matter their argument. That's what's, you know, great about, and should be great about, the American Constitution, is that their individual rights and freedoms should supersede any illegal diktat against them, which is, to my understanding, how the Constitution stands over any other command. So it's quite, you know, it's awesome that in my interpretation anyway, they should be able to think whatever they like about it. They can think that it's, you know, deadly to wear a mask, whatever motivates them. It doesn't matter what they think, because it doesn't. It's neither here nor there as to whether or not a third party, another person, can tell them that they have to. That's, you know, you can get caught in trying to get into arguments and debates about these things. It doesn't matter what your opinion is on why I don't want you to be able to tell me that I have to do anything, including wearing a mask. That's the interpretation there. It's like, I'd rather tell my friends, because I get on with them and I don't want to talk to you anymore. You're a tyrant. Good luck.
I think
you're a demon. If you've seen the video.
I think you should be removed for social media for not holding a doctorate degree and suggesting that human beings require oxygen. I think that's a conspiracy theory. You're spreading lies, disinformation, and you should be banned immediately. But for those who, you know, the whole deep state thing, I should just say this. While you shift about, I should just say this. Bill Gates is obviously heavily involved in COVID-19, and he went to Jeffrey Epstein's island, and Jeffrey Epstein was into paedophilia and also biology and genetics, and that, you know, into the science of that kind of stuff. And of course, Bill Clinton went to the Epstein Island a lot. So anyone that goes, oh, you can't all those lump things together, you've got a direct connection between Bill Gates, Mr. COVID, and Bill Clinton right there via Jeffrey Epstein. And the connection just happens to be paedophilia and genetic science and biology and labs and all that kind of stuff. And you could, that's not a tinfoil hat jobby. You could, we always said we'd do a show about this at some point, you know, the connection between, it's an obvious one. It's all over the mainstream news. Yeah. You can just Google, don't Google it. Right. Duck go it. I mean, there are articles in which Bill Gates said, Bill Gates talks openly that he met with Jeffrey Epstein and he probably shouldn't have done it. I think that was the words that he said. And of course, we know Clinton was all over there.
He did actually. He said that he saw that he had a lifestyle that Bill wouldn't want. That was kind of it was very odd, Jim. It's as bizarre as you can imagine, because it wasn't that he said that he didn't want Jeffrey to be living the life that he was living. He essentially just said that it wasn't for him. It's just like, okay, thanks, Bill. But he's confessed. That's what people forget, isn't it, Jim? That they think he's like an accused, or, you know, he wasn't. He got a limited sentence because he confessed that he was a underage sex trafficker. You know, like a confessed trafficker of children. And you're just like, hey, do you want to have lunch? It's just total madness, right? Like, and unfortunately, well, certainly unfortunately for Bill's reputation and his entire, you know, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation reputation, which I can't believe she hasn't like publicly ice picked the guy. That's what I keep waiting to have happen, because, you know, there's a lot going on there. I think we can digress into, but the simple fact is that there are documented 6 times after Epstein had been released from prison that he met with Bill Gates. Only the documented times, and several were at the fish hatchery / eugenics ranch in New Mexico. So
could you add a link to that for our bibliography, like a mainstream link to that when you upload the video, just so because this is a tangent we sort of unintentionally veered off on, and I always like to source whatever we say. But for those of you that listened that just didn't see any connection between COVID, Epstein, and the Clintons, we just showed you a little friendship sort of thing there, and go and do your own research, make up your own minds. But we just showed you that there is a connection. There is a connection. The degree of the connection, what they're doing, we don't know. We weren't there. I wouldn't want to be, but there is a connection. And people should go and look into that for themselves. And back to the masks.
There's a lot of connections there, and that it's probably worth looking into that if you're curious about it. I like the work of Whitney Webb if you enjoy that, and I think if you went that route, a woman who speaks so much truth, she has to live in Chile to do it, is my guess. But
put those links in for the bibliography so that they can always be found either in the description of the video or in the comment section of either YouTube or Facebook, whatever this is on. It depends where it is. But
you can find quote for sure, because that's entertaining. Bill's quote.
Yeah, you can find it there. So this is the Who. Who stands
by that one.
Yeah.
When I say it, I love you. You say you better. You better. Oh, the other one. Oh, yeah, right. Woo! You better bet your life. God, wasn't the Who great, Jim? Were they? Woo!
Well, let's get fooled again here. When
I say you need you, you say you better. You better. Fucking beautiful. I love the Who. Yes.
Let's do some pinball wizardry. Who stands by recommendation to not... Oh, I can't quite see the video because the Skype things are doing. To not wear masks if you are not sick or not caring for someone who is sick. So that's the Who. And of course, the Who's gone, wear masks, don't wear masks. Oh, it's airborne, it's not airborne. Lock everyone down, I don't worry about it. This is, it's almost like the Who suffers from a multiple personality disorder.
It is totally, isn't it?
So we got to bear that in mind, that next week they could go, we never said that. We recommend masks 24/7. We should think you should sleep in them, even if you live by yourself. So it's entirely, they flip-flopped 180 so many times. So, but I just wanted to point this article out. This is from March. The World Health Organization officials said Monday that they still recommend people not wear face masks unless they are sick. There is no specific evidence to suggest.
They've changed tune again, Jim. As you know, they've turned it into the fear that the asymptomatic are now contagious. So, that concept that even though you're not showing symptoms, which would basically, by that diktat or suggestion, negate you putting on a mask, they've now taken it that even though you're not showing symptoms, you should put on a mask because you might be giving it to other people, which is just, it's so not maintained by any science, as you say, Jim. It's just ridiculous. Do you remember when they were giving the highest risk key workers, the NHS, early access to grocery stores in the UK? And to imagine that all these people who are like under the highest risk in their jobs and their lives are getting first access to grocery stores, and they get to go in and touch all the plastic on the tomatoes, and they decide what steak they want or don't want, and chuck the hot dogs and the cheese back, and shuffle the ice cubes, and choose what bottles of wine they want or don't want, and look for which eggs are broken and put those back, and that can happen thousands of times a day, Jim. And it doesn't make any difference in whether or not anybody gets COVID at all. And then suddenly we have these kind of just ridiculous, arbitrary, you can now say, decisions by bodies like the WHO currently. What do we do?
Well, yeah, the WHO, and that was an article by CNN, Jacqueline Howard. So you've got CNN reporting the Who. So you've got two questionable sources right there.
But you have to translate it from Chinese, Jim. it's so hideous. I
Chinese
mean,
news
people
network.
obviously, you can see our politics by what we're making fun of, but CNN has just been most recently even just more shameless than ever in venerating the not, and it's not, nothing to do with Chinese people, like the communist structure and behavior of the Communist Party of China. Just utter madness. It's just madness. I saw again, you might have seen, but I saw again today some of the statistics on the Uyghurs being treated in in China for particularly having too many children and being threatened with fines, and if they don't get the fine, they have to go to or if they can't afford to pay the fine, they have to go to the gulag gym. And it's just like all the stuff that you and I know about already. It's just like you can't speak of China without just being like conservative, to say the least. Of just like, this isn't where we want humanity to go at all. There's like, you look at almost any, fucking peephole and anything that comes into focus, and you have to like be careful with your overt compliments and, affirmations, because it's just like, whoa, 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 whoa. There's also a lot of shit happening that like should never happen between a power structure and a fellow human being, ever.
Yeah, well, you were saying you can probably tell what our politics are. My politics are simple: equality, justice, and minimal government, but a government for everyone on the planet. Freedom for all people, races, religions,
facial
colours,
recognition technology.
Jim,
you're all of Jim's mantra there. What did Jim say at the end there? He said something about entirely dependent upon having your DNA sampled and put into the public pool. I don't know what it was. What do we got next?
They can take this, that, and the other, but they'll never take our freedom.
No,
he says,
no, they have.
Recording a podcast under house lockdown.
Yeah, totally. Irony.
Yeah.
They'll never take us alive. They already have you, Pillock. Jesus, you're locked in your bedroom, doorknob.
So this is so a little bit more light-hearted. This is from Andrew Griffin at The Independent.
Oh, yeah.
Astronaut drops mirror.
It's funny so far.
NASA astronaut drops mirror into space during spacewalk. Item does not pose risk, space agency says. An astronaut has dropped a small mirror into space by accident. No, litter bug. Yeah, he's spreading COVID-19 across the galaxy now.
For at least 18 days.
Yeah, don't worry though. I'm pretty certain he's already wearing a face mask, so he won't be spreading it there. So he's dropped a small mirror. I assume he was just doing a space selfie and just touching up his makeup and oh dear. Sure. So the object is now just part of a vast amount of space junk that is in orbit around the Earth.
Yeah, well done. Butterfingers. Oh well, whoopsies. What'd you drop there?
And I think we've covered the sort of the opinions on this piece already, but I'll just read it out to you because this sort of stuff you can see the programming here. This is by Forbes. This is by Mark Smolinski. Wearing a mask is a sign of mutual respect during the coronavirus pandemic. Dr. Mark Smolinski, an infectious disease physician and president of Ending Pandemics, explains why wearing a mask both helps to stop the spread of COVID-19 and shows respect for others. So I just wanted to put in an informed doctorate opinion that differs with other informed doctorate opinions, because that's what we do here in Cruise. We give a variety of opinions from across the world.
We have to include the opinions of dirty communists as well, just to show balance. dirty bought and paid for useful idiots, but just to
allegedly, in Craig's opinion, we can
just to keep the wheels of justice, the scales of justice, balanced.
We have no evidence that what Craig said in any way. But we always have our own minds, don't we? So the 29th of June, this is from the BBC. New guidance for weddings in England.
Right.
The, the government has published new guidance on weddings in England, allowing ceremonies of up to 30 people. It seems that COVID-19 doesn't spread under 30, but 31 it suddenly ramps up and infects.
Yeah.
So from the 4th of July, Independence Day in America, ironically, wedding and civil partnerships can go ahead, but with only 30 people, including the couple, staff such as photographer and witnesses. It'd be interesting, you know, in that thing where they do the wedding, is there anyone at the wedding now that has any reason why these two can't be wed? You know, say now or forever hold your peace. Well, there is someone, but he drew number 31 in the lottery, so he's outside the church and you can't hear right now. So
but she sucks like a drain.
Yeah, he'll be voicing his objections to the wedding via the medium of Skype. So madness. So people should.
Do you have any churches around here where the people in the congregation aren't completely out of their fucking minds? That's my take on that one too.
Craig, do you want to just adjust? I don't know if you can see it on your screen, but your face is just a little bit out of shot on my camera, at least. I don't know if it's the same for the big cam. I can see your face, but I can never see mine because I've got the articles up. But yeah, that looks better now. So Take it in. So, but with only 30 people, including the couple, such as staff, as a photographer and witnesses. People should socially distance. I wonder if they're going to socially distance on the honeymoon. People should socially distance. Singing should not take place. And hands must be washed before exchanging rings.
Yeah.
Reception
I saw that. Yeah. Cripes.
With only 2 households able to be indoors.
Oh, yes. Oh, my goodness, Jim is just so nuts.
There's a wedding album for you.
It's so nuts. It's just tedious. We're prisoners. We're prisoners.
Yep. All for our own good, though, Craig. They love us. You know, government, you can see from government policy over the last 10 years how much they care about the lives of the vulnerable in this country. So, naturally, it's all for our own. They've been so caring over the last 10 years. Just as Labour was extremely caring to the people of Iraq.
Sure.
You know? Again, you know, we're not Tories or Labour by any means. We just
don't like children, you know.
Oh, I'd like to go to. I'd like to be the 31st person at a wedding.
Don't starve kids, Madeleine Albright or Albright.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Was it worth it? 500,000 dead kids? Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. Sign me up. So line another 500,000 up. Yeah. Absolutely.
Henry,
for anyone. For people that are wondering what we're talking about, Craig, do you want to just elaborate on that quote that the Madeleine Albright quote?
The Secretary of State, perhaps even during the Iraq War. I guess that's probably why they were talking to her about it. They were asking whether or not the sanctions that led to, I believe, lowest estimates 500,000 and highest 1 million deaths of mainly children and infants in Iraq prior to invasion was worth it. And she paused. She was wistful. Yes, I think it was. Just one of those kind of people that just like, hey, here's how many babies you outright murdered with your actions. Do you think, like, looking at the world now, that that's trickled down or even expanded into a benefit for humanity currently today? Yes, I do. I think children aren't our future. The more of them we can murder in bizarre ways, the better. They're just terrible.
Forgive me, but I've forgotten, Craig. Was that interview before or after the depleted uranium?
I'm not sure. I don't know.
Because you know that's all over Iraq, right? They use the depleted uranium.
Yeah. But I didn't know how long the knowledge of it being all over Iraq when that came into the public forum. I know
I
that
was just wondering if that
it's
half a
heavily
million was
polluted,
taking into account the birth
particularly.
defects that are going
Oh,
to be there for the next 1,000 years
oh
or
my
so, according
goodness.
to
Yeah, yeah,
scientists.
yeah. Of course. Yes, yes, yes. Was that
As a
worth it?
result of the
Was that
depleted
worth
uranium. I was just wondering if that was taken into account, that's all, or whether it was just half a million without the depleted uranium.
the
I forget these
saddest?
facts.
Yeah, the saddest thing is the further enmity that's built from, like massacres, like to mention again Fallujah. There was great bitterness between those rivals, and it led to, like, straight up war crimes. So it's just, how is that allowed to happen, Jim Grant? Hate to digress into such a depressing topic, but yeah.
Well, on my video on my Facebook channel, Jim Grant Comedy. This is a shameless plug, by the way, Craig. Forgive me. On my Facebook page, Jim Grant Comedy, there's a video called "How to Kill 4,000 Disabled People," and in then I break down with the links in the articles some of how our British politicians profited from the Iraq situation. And all the
Wow.
stories put
Right.
there. So. I sort of veered off. It was all about, how the government ate us thing. But yeah, if you Jim Grant Comedy, Facebook, click videos, how to kill 4,000 disabled people. It's in there.
How gross.
Speaking
How to be a
of
billionaire
social,
on the back of selling arms to proxies.
well, that can be our next skip. So our next article, speaking of social media, this is an article that is the 29th of June. So that's yesterday, I believe. So, or at least on our recording, this will be going out Thursday. So India bans TikTok and 58 other Chinese apps amid deadly border conflict between the two nuclear-armed nations. TikTok and 58 other, mostly Chinese-owned apps have been banned in India. The Indian Ministry of Information Technology cited security concerns. The ministry claims it received several reports of data theft and of privacy violation. The ban comes after 20 Indian soldiers died in a clash with Chinese soldiers on the border. Now, we're not involved in clashes on the border, but when we first talked about doing this broadcast, this podcast, Craig, we talked about using Zoom, and I said I had serious concerns about the do you remember me saying?
I do,
absolutely. It was stuff like this that I'd researched and thought, do you know what? I'm going to give that a miss because it don't,
you have the same security vetting process as the Indian National Intelligence Agency.
It's weird. Every Indian man...
It's so strange that everything that Jim does is either preceded or concurrent with the Indian deep state.
It's weird, but every Indian that I've ever met in my life, I get on good with.
I'll bet. How funny. I'm surprised that article has left out the, I believe, 43 dead of the Chinese. I read somewhat extensively about that latest border clash, and I actually, in speaking to a mutual friend of ours, Jim, I couldn't. It was really hard to. I really didn't want to reveal the details. It's just one of those utterly hideous battles of human history that took place in really, really bitter, horrible conditions at quite high altitude and extreme cold, and was very close quarters and led to hand-to-hand fighting that included men being thrown off cliffs and body mutilations. Particularly were the accusations of the Indians after the battles. So there's some real heavy acrimony going on there. And again, I had trouble even talking about this with my friend recently, Jim, just because it was just like everything I read within that that exchange between two, nuclear armed powers. Was just so base and horrible, and it really depressed me. It just made me think. Like, in fact, I'm remembering now, Jim, I was walking out into the patio, and I just in mid conversation to him just said, "This is World War III. This is so inflammatory for world affairs. It's terrifying." Apparently what happened is the I believe it was the Indians who were, through their communiques, whatever rudimentary degree they do communicate with each other's militaries, they believed that they were retreated further than they had, Jim, and they were stumbled upon by quite a large contingent of obviously tooled up Chinese soldiers, and they in the dark of night, in extreme cold and high altitude, as earlier mentioned, they started just like trench fighting with each other, Jim Grant, including throwing I believe the Indian commander off the cliff early into the proceedings and into the freezing water below. So you're just like, can you imagine anything? We should have left this behind a century ago in human conflict, and now here we are again, two nuclear armed powers in the modern day murdering each other with clubs and nails. It's just beyond. It's beyond.
Well, if the UK government are to be believed, all the Chinese needed to do was have a cough and go and sing next to the Indians, and they'll be all dead.
Yeah.
To do some stand-up comedy, let that COVID aerosol spray out into the Indians. That'll do the job.
They're only allowed.
No need for bullets.
No.
Give them the whole rendition of. I don't know any musicals. I just suddenly realised I was about to do a thing about give them a whole rendition of a musical, and then suddenly realised I don't watch musicals. I don't know any.
Come to the improv with a musical song, and you didn't know one.
I was trying to think of the name of that one with was it Julie Andrews on the Swiss mountaintops, and the name completely eluded. The Sound of Music. That's the one.
Sound of Music.
I just had the Chinese troops. Which of the Chinese troops that were a little bit under the weather? Which of the ones got a cough? Right, you go down to the Indian border and you sing The Sound of Music at them. They'll be dead like flies with COVID in no time. So,
yeah, everyone will have it then once they're singing together.
Yeah. Christ. Speaking of the ridiculous, this is again. This is yesterday. This is from The Sun. So
we know it's Liverpool.
I like what Liverpool did there. I really do. Power to the people of Liverpool. I think that's great what they did up there, banning the newspaper. That is real. That community action. I commend the people of Liverpool. Right. So Ryanair pilots probed after video shows one using rubber chicken to operate the throttle.
Perfect.
2 pilots were under investigation last night after a video emerged of one using a rubber chicken to operate the holiday jet's throttle. Ryanair bosses have launched a probe into the unprofessional scenes by the highly trained pair in the cockpit of the Boeing 737-800. And there's pictures of them there with the rubber chicken using the lever. In the footage filmed by one of the pilots, the first officer turns the open-mouthed yellow and red toy to face the camera before using it to push the throttle lever forward on the jet, which can hold up to 189 passengers.
Wow.
In another clip from the video, the giggling pilot squeezes the plaything, causing it to squeak. I've got to say up front, I haven't seen the video, but from the photos, I don't have a problem with it. It is unprofessional, but there's a difference between it doesn't strike me as anyone's life was in danger. Do you know what I mean? But on the flip side of it, the pilots should have probably thought, we may get into a little bit of bother. It maybe not from the bosses, but from the PR department of our firm. Yeah. So
you'd think so, Jim.
Do you know what I mean? A little bit of common sense, guys. Yeah. It's one thing to, do that and then show your significant other or your mate down the pub. But one might not want that kind of stuff going all over the place. Oh, and there's pictures of him. Yeah, there's pictures of him doing funny faces. Look, the guy seems like quite a funny guy to go down to the pub with, assuming that there's not already 29 people in the pub, because if there is 29 people in the pub, Craig, me and the pilot would make 31, and that we then get arrested for that.
But is he a type of guy that you want to go to 33,000 feet with? That's what they're asking.
Yeah, that's the thing. So I don't have a problem with people having a laugh, but then again, I wasn't on the plane,
He's
so
not going to be working for BA or Virgin or Qantas or Singapore Airlines or Lufthansa or even who are the Dutchies again?
or even Ryanair, his current employer, by the sound of it, by the
KLM.
time they're through with him.
Exactly, or even trickle down to if he doesn't watch how he behaves, he won't even be able to get a job with Ryanair. Sorry about that.
So
I don't know. Yeah,
it's
right.
just
It's got its reputation, doesn't it? Hilariously.
It's health and safety in the most professional
But
of environments. I mean,
I
you've
must
got to have.
I must give a caveat as well, Jim, with largely their issues with Canadian-made, particularly Bombardier planes. So I have to mitigate my insult to Ryanair and also throw in from Canadians everywhere. We're all so sorry. Jesus. We don't know what happened. They started making snowmobiles, and we're just like, yeah, you guys are really good at making snowmobiles. And then Bombardier's just like, maybe we should go into the air, huh? And everyone just like, Canadians are like, don't tell them no, they'll think it's racist. And just like, before you know it, people who are used to making snowmobiles are like putting fucking wings on the things, and there you go. Now they forget to make them as airtight as they should, which was the original issue with the ones that were sent to Ryanair, Jim, if I can bring you up to speed on what I'm talking about. And I think Ryanair, maybe even rather than even not offloading the planes that they had that were the same type that were having the issues, but I think they may have bought some from elsewhere, if I'm remembering correctly. But regardless, Scandinavian Airlines just got rid of them like a hot potato. Countries like Sweden, where safety records are, potential suicide issues if you don't meet your targets. They weren't having the same type of plane that was given to the fleet in the UK. And I think the other issue they had, you can look this up as well if you want out there, that I think they were having regular landing gear issues, if I'm not mistaken. So it's just like the British Ryanair flight. The last thing they've got as a problem is a pilot with a sense of humor and a rubber chicken, I can tell you. They're just dropping flack right now. They're dropping tinfoil to get you off of their actual issues. I can't even believe. What date is that article from, Jim? By the way, because they're not open anymore, are they? Are they still operating?
Oh, that was from yesterday. I've switched to another article now, but I'm pretty certain I've read out the date as yesterday. But no, I think that was. Who knows?
Yeah, someone with a job. Right on. Yeah. He's not a chicken, whatever. I'll fly with that guy.
Yeah, I would just like to say I don't think they should fire him. Just a little slap on the wrist and a little, would do it. But what I'm trying to say is, that's the most, professional someone has to be, and it's life and death on a plane and everything like that. But also, I don't want to live in a world without even the slightest bit of a sense of humor. I don't want to live in that world. And people like that make me smile.
Not as much
so long as they don't slip at the jet plummets into the ocean.
Not as much of a sense of humor as that Scottish guy who kicked the guy at the airport who was on fire in the nuts. I mean, that's a great sense of humor. It's only tangentially related to this story, but anytime you get a chance to talk about reactions to terrorism, you gotta throw in Glasgow, right? I saw him on fire, so I thought I better kick him in the crotch too. Just because I'm there, huh? I was at the airport, I minded my own, yeah. I noticed the perpetrator, as I now know him to be, ablaze. So I thought I'd best provide him with some more drama on his route to the afterlife by also demolishing his testicles, which he seemed it seems strange to me, but now looking back, perhaps not so much. He didn't seem to notice. Just
got a bad accent there.
That's all right.
All your years in Edinburgh have done you proud. That's
I guess so. Yeah. Yeah.
It's not bad. Were you going to go to Edinburgh this year? I mean, obviously not
I
now,
don't
but
think
were you
so. No,
going?
I had other limited engagements in August that were in other places, so I was keeping my fingers crossed to not actually go to Scotland this year. I don't know if this was going to be the good year for anybody. It's already fraught to go up there, isn't it, Jim? It's a hard. Have you been up in Edinburgh a few times?
Not my cup of tea.
Never before, huh? Wow.
The
Yeah,
last thing I want to
living
do
in
for
a
a month
Scottish
is to
city
be
for a month.
around people like me for a month.
Uh,
Oh God, no. No, I'm more of a lone wolf, solitary creature.
well,
Me.
it's also, ironically, it's the only place in my life I've ever seen, Jim, where there's flu epidemics breaking out in the summer just because the weather's so horrible, predictably and often there in August. It's the only place, well, other than maybe parts of Canada that I've been to, where like August behaves like almost, the verge of winter almost anywhere else. And consequently, pulmonary diseases are pretty, almost year round, actually. So it wouldn't have been good with COVID.
And this year, it would be called the second wave.
Oh, of
So,
course.
how are we doing for time, by the way, Craig? We're
I
around
think
an hour
we're at
now.
about, I'd say an hour five, an hour.
All right, we'll just
We
wrap
can
up with
do
a
10 or
couple.
15, whatever you like. Yeah, no,
Yeah, we'll just wrap
no.
up with a few more
Yeah,
articles.
I
So
like
we've got this is May the 21st, New York
it.
Post
Yeah.
by Lee Brown. Scientists believe cannabis could help prevent and treat
Ah,
coronavirus. And
yeah!
you'll like this one, Craig, because
Ow!
it is a team of
Ow!
Canadian scientists. This is why I brought it up here. A team of Canadian scientists believe
Yeah!
it's found strong strains of cannabis that can both help and treat and prevent coronavirus.
Nice.
So, researchers from the University of Lethbridge, do you know where that is?
Nice. Oh,
Said
do I know? I played the University of Lethbridge. Are you kidding? Absolutely. Love Lethbridge.
Well,
Utterly,
they said in a study in April showed at least 13 cannabis plants were high in CBD that appeared to affect the ACE2 pathways that the bug uses to access the body. And we talked about the ACE protein inhibitors back in our early episodes. I would urge our listeners, if you haven't done it, to go and listen to our first two podcasts where we really broke down a lot of what we thought was coming. And I've got to say, I think the articles that we chose to cover were bang on the money. Now, the problem with listening to our first two podcasts is that the sound quality is probably terrible. But
yeah.
if you can stomach that, the content's actually quite. I think I
Came out
think
with
our body of work holds up.
nice.
I think what we covered at the time has held up pretty damn well over what we've said and what articles that we picked up at the
Yeah.
time about vitamin D and all that kind of stuff. It turns out that basically the government should have hired
Wow.
us and not Neil Ferguson, Mr. Campbell. I think we'd have done a better job.
Yes. Be in a better place today. Absolutely. I think so.
Yeah, if we were in charge, judging
agree.
by this article, we wouldn't be handing out masks to people to go on public transport. We'd be handing out joints.
To give you some idea of what Lethbridge is like, the thing that's burning in my mind right now to tell you about, Jim, and I have spent quite a bit of time in Lethbridge, but even the last time I was there, I was able to tell the good people of Lethbridge that I was aware of their story that had I think it was a cop. I don't think it was a fish and wildlife officer. So hard for me to tell you these hideous stories from Canada, Jim, because part of me doesn't want to tell you because I've got some pride to the place, but I also want you to know how ridiculous it is that we can actually look it up pretty quick. But I believe a Lethbridge police officer began repeatedly attempting, again, I believe, to kill a deer. I think, Jim, I think with his truck. I think, and in front of I'm having trouble telling this story without like my patented Canadian swearing, because this is a story that needs a lot of swearing in it. But his truck, anyway, his fucking truck, anyway. He has attempted to kill a deer in front of like a public gallery. People also stopped at the side of the road with and I don't know if it like The first time he just was like completely nuts and thought it would like die really quickly and right away. Or I'm trying to assess what could be going through the head of a man who's wearing a uniform and is now repeatedly with his vehicle trying to exterminate a pretty tear emotional invoking animal. But just, can you imagine being that crazy ever in your life? It's like, even for a moment to think, geez, I'm gonna kill that deer now. I wonder how and then just like looking over at your squad car and looking back at the deer thing, you know what? I wonder how much these locals here would mind if I got in my squad car and just started like reversing and driving over a fucking squealing and what do they call it when they're doing the chicken and stuff? Like how crazy would you have to be, Jim? This is what I'm talking about. That like Canada is just full.
Was it injured? Was it injured? Was he put out?
I guess it must have been. Yeah. Again, we have to like. I can help you with the. Oh, of course, I'm filming with my phone. If you look up Lethbridge and officer, hurting a deer with his vehicle, I think you'll probably get the information that you're looking for. But all this does, Jim, is like reminds me of other completely mental, not just like stories from Canada, but particularly animal stories from that part of the world, like coming home from school in junior high. And I still remember the exact road and walking down the little hill and about to turn the corner. And there was like a commotion in what we would call a crosswalk area. So an area where it almost looks like a house is missing in a residential area. And rather than having the house, they've like got a bit of parkland on either side of a path that's got abutments in it so that you can't get cars through on the bike path, but bikes can sneak through. So it's like, a pretty common cut through area for young pedestrians like me. And we get there, Jim, and there's just like a bit of commotion. And I think I'm quite sure I told you this story before. And there's like a van that was parked there, and it was a bit nondescript, and we didn't know really what it's for. And then you just like quickly realize, it's not just a deer, but like a little deer, like a doe, like a Bambi that you would see on a cartoon.
Oh, you're gonna make our listeners cry.
There's a little deer in between like houses in a residential area where there's only a bike path, and I'm like, literally, I'm one of like maybe a half dozen people that are there, and I'm probably 14, 15 years old, and Jim, I got no idea what's going on at all, like just not other than just like drawn in by a small crowd that are noticing that there's some commotion, and it happens to be a deer. And Jim, it wasn't like half a second, a heartbeat later, just like I almost fucking soiled myself because of how loud it was. I do remember like when the shotgun blast went off, it was like a shriek was your reaction, because you couldn't see who was holding the shotgun and where it was targeted from, but of course we could all see what it hit, which is the crazy bit about it, right? Like if I'd seen the guy aiming the gun, I'd have been prepared for what was next. But suddenly the first we knew of anything was that this group of people were watching a beautiful animal, and then it was just like, Jim Grant, it was just like blown all the fuck over the wall, right? Like over the fence that it was on, like just like. And I plead with you, Jim. I'm not telling you this for my own like enjoyment or benefit of the look on your face. It's just like, who the fuck would ever do that in front of people? Whoever, like, and that's just like Canada, Jim. I can't tell you any crazier place than just how can you imagine an officer of the law would think, I'll kill an animal with my car in front of other people right here at the side of the road. But that's what they did in Lethbridge. So imagine what it's like to live there as just a normal person, Jim. I can only impress upon you what kind of a world you're living with. And look up, if you're looking up, there's a place called Fort Whoop-Up that's in the center of Lethbridge. And it's the last and largest native on native battle of the Great Plains. So if you're ever curious about the kind of native interactions in North America, particularly Canada, and their wars between each other, I believe it was the Cree Nation, and maybe I don't want to get into being overly knowledgeable of it, but I also find it curious because on horseback at that time, fighting each other were half British. So people of British descent, particularly Scottish, who at that point had been integrated into native tribes, were then like, Europeans on horseback, as naked as me, killing each other with hammers. It's like, that's what's awesome about that place.
I've got two things to say about that. The first is, to our listeners, no animals were harmed in the making of this podcast.
Yeah. And wait till you see the cartoon.
And the second thing is, you're talking about this connection between Scotland and Canada. Nova Scotia means New Scotland, doesn't it? And the indigenous people of Canada, are they called the Mi'kmaq? The Mi'kmaq when they were indigenous to Canada.
Well, the ones that are to this story interesting are the Métis, and the Métis tend to be either Indian with French or Indian with Scottish. I think can sometimes be considered Métis, but it may be specific to French. Again, I wish not to offend, only to learn.
I could be wrong on this, but the Mi'kmaq flag is exactly the same, just a mirror version of the Knights Templar battle flag, and of course the Knights.
Oh, isn't
Templar
that interesting?
Scottish thing. So Google that, because
cool.
If you go and look at the Mi'kmaq legends, they talk about, I think it's something called Goose Cap or something, which they think is Henry Sinclair. Basically, the whole premise of this is that they think there may be the Knights Templar or what remained of them, because we know they got away, made their way over to Nova Scotia in 1398.
I didn't know that.
Go have a look of.
They're great people.
Go and look up Mi'kmaq flag and Knights Templar battle flag and Henry Sinclair voyage. And this is just a pure conspiracy theory, that it's pure speculation and everything like that. But and of course, then you go down the whole what's in Oak Island Road and everything. But that's a whole, that's a 7-season series in itself
cool.
on the History Channel, I think.
I love that part of the world. Nova Scotia is a great part of Canada, and they call it New Scotland.
Yeah, you'll love it then. Look at the Henry Sinclair conspiracy theories and all that kind of stuff.
One of my favorite tunes is that comes from there, Jim. It's done by a guy named Stompin' Tom Connors, who is from Skinner's Pond, Nova Scotia. So a little part of that, but it's called the Gumboot Cloggeroo. It's always been one of my favorites. Well, we sailed away at the break of day to pull traps in oilskin trousers on the Susie Jack, but tonight we're back with 1,000 pounds of lobsters. Whole shanty town, we're gonna run you down. We got money coming out of my stockings, 'cause tonight I'm due to bushwhack Sue and take her to the Gumboot Cloggeroo, and we'll do a little gumboot clogging. We'll do a little gumboot clogging. He's just wild. He's famous for kicking a 2x4, or a 4x2 by your standards, Jim, at each concert with his cowboy boot, and basically turns it into pulp by the end. He's Stompin' Tom, but that's his neck of the woods. And if you're curious about any part of that, the fusion of European history and Canada through Nova Scotia, and the stuff Jim's talking about just sounds wild. That's just amazing.
They've found Templar symbols in some parts of Canada nearby this sort of stuff. They found lots of Templar stuff, and of course they were wiped out in 1307, and their fleets went missing, and I think they ended up in that part of the world. But that's pure theory.
And so did the Vikings, of course, which is a curious archaeology to follow of that same area. It's utterly wild.
Yeah, a pure theory that we can't source on this show, but there's some interesting things on it. So our final couple of articles tonight, this just backs up what we were saying earlier, so I don't think we need to spend that much time on it. This is by the 25th of June. TikTok to stop snooping on users' clipboards after iPhone update shows app constantly reads copied text. So a security patch from Apple has suddenly exposed just how many smartphone apps
Wow.
are reading users' clipboards every time they are on screen. So maybe that's what the Indians were pissed off about. And our final,
I would say, from what I know,
article here tonight is from Thursday, the 25th of June. I just want to talk before I read this article about media manipulation. And I'm not saying that that happened in this case. I'm just saying I want to break down my understanding of what a straw man is. For a generic setting. I'm not saying it occurred in the article that I'm about to read out. Just for listeners who don't know what a straw man is, I want to tell you what it is and give you a generic example. So a straw man is where you've got something you want to debate, and then you pick a little subject of that you know you can win or that you know you can falsify or control, and then you make the whole argument about that. And I'll give you a generic example of a straw man. So cannabis legalization, the straw man on that will be, is it good? Is it bad? Because people say, right, we need cannabis for its medicinal benefits. So what you do at that point is you make the straw man about, does it have medicinal benefits? Does it have harmful benefits? And you make the straw man about that. What you take the debate away from is, should we have the right to decide what goes in our body, whether it's good or bad? You start to make the debate about, is it good or is it bad? And you take away the debate from, do we have the right, the freedom to choose something irregardless of whether it's good or bad? And you make the debate about the good or bad. So have I given a reasonable example of a straw man there, Craig? Do you think I've explained that?
I think so. Yeah, sure.
Right.
Yeah, quite
so
precisely.
I just want to read out our next article. And I'm not saying that's what happened here, but I want to give an example. To any listener, you should hopefully I've explained what a straw man argument now is. So this is by Thursday, the 25th of June. Robbie Williams suggests debunked Pizzagate conspiracy theory is true in bizarre interview. So this is an article from the Metro. Robbie Williams has suggested the Pizzagate conspiracy theory hasn't truly been debunked in a bizarre new interview. He sat down with an interview with journalist Anna Breeze, and in a teaser clip from the second part of the interview, the rock DJ singer appears to question the validity of a conspiracy theory alleging that several high-ranking Democratic Party officials and US restaurants were involved in an alleged human trafficking and child sex ring. The theory was widely debunked during the 2016 US presidential election following an investigation by the New York Times and the fact-checking website Snopes. We believe her. So what my take on that was, it was all about the WikiLeaks, and there was some stuff in that WikiLeaks that definitely needed investigating. There was stuff on the Podesta laptop that definitely needed investigating. There was stuff in Hillary Clinton's emails that definitely needed investigating. And there's a documentary that you can watch. I think it's called Out of Shadows on YouTube. And again, I don't know the documentary owner. I don't know if that's all accurate or anything like that. But what I'm saying, we've already ascertained that, and we've already seen a lot of Hollywood figures have connections to paedophiles. A lot of, and that. Look at who Jeffrey Epstein's circle was and everything like that. So what I'm saying is, having looked into the whole actual Pizzagate thing was about that restaurant, and they looked into that, and it probably looked like it was a bit weird, but totally debunked. What I'm saying is that all came about as a result of that WikiLeaks dump, and they investigated that one aspect of it, which I think probably led nowhere, and a lot of the undercurrent.
Well, it led to a lot of dead New York cops.
I don't know about that, but I'm just saying that that's what the media does when if that's what the media can do when they want to cover something up. And anyone who says they don't cover it up, well, go and listen to them. There's that report. I forget what channel we're on, where she said, she admitted, didn't she? Said that, I forget what channel it was. It was a major investigation network thing, and she said, was it AB? I don't want to name the name and get it wrong, but. It was a major network, a major investigator that network. She said, we had Epstein 3 years ago. Sorry. We had them all over Clinton. We had everything like that. And we were told not to do it. So anyone who says you're a conspiracy theory for saying media covers up.
Katie Couric on NBC, I think that was.
I just wanted to make the point that cover-ups that evidence says that there are cover-ups of things like this. So it's not a far-fetched to say that they may have covered something
Got her
else
on the hot mic
at all.
Yeah.
And how it can be done is when you pick, okay, 10 items on that list. The other 9, they're bad. We can't really call them outright lies. But that number 10 on that list, I don't think that's entirely accurate. Let's make the whole story about number 10, debunk that, and then call the whole umbrella of the thing debunked. And we haven't debunked the other 9, but we've made the whole investigation about point number 10, and it's turned out that we can legitimately debunk point number 10, and we will then claim that we've debunked all 10 points as a result of it coming under that umbrella. That's how you do a cover-up via a straw man investigation.
That's where we're at, Jim.
That's how it's done.
That's one of the
done here. I don't know.
One of the techniques, isn't it?
Yeah, but Robbie Williams, hey, maybe we should. Do we know anyone that could reach out to him?
In a bizarre interview. Bizarrely, what he was talking about wasn't substantiated in the mainstream news.
Yeah. So that's why it's covered here on Cruise. And
absolutely.
Yeah.
Completely unsubstantiated by a couple of yahoos.
Yeah, we are nothing more than opinionated news repeater monkeys here.
I don't know.
Cruise.
Just one guy talking.
Yep. So we'd like to, before we go, just a couple of shout outs to people that have commented on our last thing. We had, this is Lucky Show 13 was excellent, very funny. Cool. I try my hardest not to listen to any news, so do find the stories you find fascinating. Also, it says, looking a little bit sunburned there, Craig.
Someone's concerned about my complexion, are they? Oh, no.
Yeah, and that's not all they're concerned about. We were talking about estrogen in the water, weren't we?
Goodness.
They've mentioned that. Yeah, your boobs, your man boobs. And we've had thanks for the entertainment. It almost
tickles to have them talked about.
Thanks for the entertainment. Even watching Jim laughing incessantly at Craig sets me off. So there you go. That's the whole.
That's funny.
And someone else agreed with you, actually, sided with you over me on the whole restaurant thing, and said, I know a few great places that serve food, but I am with Craig. I will not be wasting my time or money while these totalitarian fascist rules are in place. Someone said Starlight Drives, WTF. That is one of the most heinous, horrific things I have ever heard done to people. So, and we've got another shout out about one of our previous episodes. I finally enjoyed the show after watching it some 3 weeks late. Thank you to everyone who comments
watching
about
the back catalogue.
Yeah, and nice. We really appreciate that.
Absolutely.
So, this has been episode 14 on Tuesday, the 30th of June. Thank you. Please, if you're whatever platform you're on, subscribe in whatever manner the platform allows you to. So if you're on Facebook, please click the like button on the Cruise page. And if you're on YouTube, please click the subscribe button. Thank you very much for watching. Any more closing comments, Mr. Campbell?
Not at all, Jim. That was plump and full. I enjoyed that. We had some nice introspective moments on today's episode, but I'm already looking forward to 15.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for watching. Cheers.